Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and in this video, I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about the Flashforge AD5X 3D printer. I'm going to tell you what my experience has been like using this printer over the past few months. I'm going to go over some pros, going to go over some cons, going to talk about the history of this printer and where it finds itself today. And of course, I'm going to show you a whole mess of prints that I have made with this printer. So sit back, relax, we got a lot to talk about. So first we want to talk about the price, because if the price isn't good enough, you're not going to want to buy it anyway. So the regular price on this printer is $399, and that includes the printer itself and the IFS, which is the Intelligent Filament System that enables you to do multicolor or multi-material 3D printing. But since this is the relaunch of this printer, Flashforge decided to sweeten the pot a little bit and give a coupon for $30 off. You can go to their website and there's going to be a promo code there that you can put in, and it'll knock the price down to $369. And that's one of the more attractive things about this printer, because it essentially becomes one of the most, if not the most affordable way for you to get a Core XY 3D printer with a multi-material filament system. So let me tell you how this whole thing works. This gray box on the side is the Intelligent Filament System, and it can accommodate up to 4 spools of filament. It cannot be extended with another IFS to use even more filament, so you're limited to just 4. And the way that it works is, once you put the filament on these spools that's to the side, you feed the spools through the bottom of the IFS. And when the printer is turned on, it senses when the filament is near. You're going to hear those gears start spinning up, and it's going to grab the filament. It's going to pull it through one of these 4 tubes all the way down to the hot end. It's going to get close to getting in the hot end, but not quite. It's going to stop just short of that. And once you put the filament in, you have to go to the screen and you have to tell the printer what type of filament you put in there and the color of that filament. Now, unlike some other companies these days that use RFID technology to identify their particular spools of filament and set the appropriate printing parameters for that filament, Flashforge doesn't have that. So you have to manually input the color and the type of filament into the printer itself. They give you a handful of options to choose from: PLA, PETG, TPU, ABS, PLA carbon fiber, and there's some more in there as well. So you just pick whichever one comes closest to what you put in there, and then the printer will have that information and it'll act accordingly. Now, let's step back a little bit and let's talk about the setup. Before you even can put any filament in here, what's the setup process like? Well, it's really easy. Just like a lot of modern 3D printers, this comes mostly assembled. The only thing that you have to do is remove some screws that help to keep, for example, the bed in place during shipping so that nothing moves. And then once you do that, you have to take the screen off of a bracket and you have to connect the screen to the front of the frame. Fortunately, the ribbon cable is already attached, so you don't have to fiddle with that. That is amazing. And then you have to put on the filament spool holders, and then the IFS module itself is connected to its own mount. So the mount gets put into the frame with some screws, and then the IFS literally just twists right on. It's a very snug, very secure fit. Then the IFS goes into the printer, the plug goes into the printer, and the other end goes into the IFS. Then at this point, you can just take your PTFE tubes, put them in the IFS, move all the way here and stick this part here into the print head, plug it in, turn it on, and you're going to be good to go. The printer is going to go through a calibration process, which is going to adjust its temperatures, and it's going to do vibration compensation, and it's going to level the bed, get everything set up for you. Then you'll finally be able to print. And the process is not something that takes a long time to do, so you won't have to worry about spending hours waiting to get everything set up. Now, another really important thing that you need to know before we move any further is that there are 2 different versions of this particular printer. If you buy this printer starting from June, then you are going to get what is essentially the second wave of AD5X printers, because this printer was initially put up up for sale for pre-order in November of 2024. And once those pre-orders sold out, Flashforge delayed the shipping because of an issue that they had with the poop chute on the back of the printer. That's where the purged filament goes out of. And they delayed it until about February or March. And that's when they started shipping the printers out. And that's when I received this printer from Flashforge. Now, there are some differences between this version and the one that you are going to get. Not anything super huge. Essentially, the core is going to be the same, but there are some improvements that they've made. For example, they changed the spool holders. They look different. They're not going to be these black spool holders that I have here. And that is a good thing because these spool holders were not perfect. They did not accommodate every spool of filament appropriately. They had a tendency to grind the inside of cardboard spools, leading to cardboard dust, getting onto the filaments that were underneath and potentially causing issues that way. So they changed those filament spool holders. They also say that they've upgraded the nozzle that's used in order to better combat clogs. I personally never ran into a clog with this printer, but obviously a lot of other people have to make it a problem, and that's why they changed it. And then the third change they've made that I've been told from Flashforge is that they upgraded the cooling system, which could provide better looking prints and better quality prints. Now, I understand if you bought this earlier and you feel upset because you may feel like you've been a beta tester this whole time. But fortunately, Flashforge has said they are going to send people who bought this printer previously the replacement spool holders and the upgraded nozzle. I'm not sure how they'll go about doing that, if they're just going to go through a database and see who bought the printer and just send those parts out, or if you have to send an email or fill out a form. That part is not clear yet, but they have gone on record saying that they are going to provide those upgrades to the people who bought it previously. So hopefully you won't feel too left out after that has gone through. So because this is a multicolor / multi-material printer, how do some of the prints look? Well, I'm going to show you some of them, and then I'll just continue talking about my experiences. Now, one of the things that Flashforge had talked about that really set this printer apart in the beginning was the fact that it could print 95A TPU through the IFS without having to do anything fancy. And that was something that not even the mighty Bamboo Lab could claim. The fact that you could run TPU directly through this and print multicolor TPU 95A, that was a big selling point. Now, fast forward to today, they've backed off on that claim. If you go to their website, they're now talking about using 64D TPU, which is still TPU, it's just more like rigid. But before they changed that information, I had already been printing with 95A TPU, and let me show you some results of that. This is a Captain America helmet printed with Flashforge 95A TPU from a dryer box directly through the IFS and into the print head printed on the AD5X. This print took around 19 hours to print, and as you can see, it's really quite squishy. Now, I'm going to tell you that this A is not TPU. This A was printed with PLA, and then I glued it on, but the helmet itself is just TPU. And as you get closer, you can see that it did a pretty good job at printing this helmet. We've got our shinier spots right here for this blue, and then you got this textured area that's around this helmet as well. And it does still require a little bit of cleanup where the supports were attached to this helmet here. So the supports were along the bottom here, basically just along the bottom. So if you get like a deburring tool or something, you can just clean that up and clean up this part here around the eyes, and it will look even better than what it does now. But in those 19 hours, it printed all in one go. I didn't have any problems with it. And I thought this was a good example of this being able to successfully use 95A TPU from the dryer box into the IFS. Another example of TPU here is this wrist stabilizer, which doesn't fit me because I didn't scale it right. But basically, The way that it works is you put your thumb through here and then you could wrap this part around your wrist. And then you could take some of these also TPU 95A printed rings and it would just clip on. These rings are oversized. It would clip on to this and you would wrap it around and connect it to the other side. This was also printed in one go. It's got this honeycomb pattern on it that just came out nice and clean. And you can see the first layers here as well, also nice and clean. And I put clear TPU on top of the blue TPU. So this is a dual TPU print. And again, no problems with it. And this came out looking very nice. Also printed a TPU phone case in the same colors, trying the exact same thing. That also came out really good. I've got a TPU rubber, well, it's not a rubber duck, it's a TPU duck that I printed out. No supports necessary, again, from this clear 95A TPU. And this also came out looking good. And even the overhangs for the beak, it printed this really cleanly. And like, there were no supports that went up to support this. This is just straight out of the printer. So my experience with using TPU on here has been really, really good. Oh, and before I forget, this miniature Mandalorian helmet, which the supports on here were so hard to take off. I should have taken advantage of the multi-material and just did maybe like a PLA support interface to make it easier to take off. But these are just on here too good, so I'm not going to even try to take off the rest. But the point is, when you look at the intricate patterns of this sort of tribal Mandalorian helmet, and you can make out all of these details around this helmet, that just goes to show you how good this printer did at recapturing those details, and most importantly, printing with 95A TPU. And this was eSun 95A TPU, not Flashforge TPU. So I don't know why they backed off on that claim, but I have not run into any big problems with using TPU. The only issue I've ever had is when I was printing a phone case and when it was trying to change filaments, it wasn't being pulled into the IFS like it should have. I restarted the print, took the filament out, put it back in, and the second time around, it printed just fine. So I guess that's just one of those weird things, but TPU has been a good experience for me. Now, since I've talked about the IFS, let me also tell you about a problem that I've had with this IFS. This is actually the second one that I had, because I did run into an issue that I've heard some people talking about, and one that I actually just sort of mentioned, that sometimes it would have an issue pulling the filament through. Now, this time I wasn't sure exactly what was happening. I had some white PLA trying to go through this, the bottom of the IFS, and it wasn't taking it. No matter what I did, it would not take it. So I tried to give it a little bit of encouragement. As it was trying to pull in the filament, I just grabbed the bottom and I was pushing the filament up to just give it a little bit of extra pressure. I pushed too hard and it caused this coupler piece to shoot out of the IFS. And because that happened, there was nothing there to keep the PTFE tube in place. It did not have a sense of when it should stop. So it would just keep going and keep going and keep going. So I couldn't use that spot in the IFS. And I asked Flashforge, is there anything that I could do to fix it? And they just opted to just send me another IFS. So if you run into an issue with trying to feed your filament up, if it's not grabbing it, just don't try to force it up there, because you might run into the same problem that I did. Now let's talk about some multicolor printing just using regular old PLA. Now, the way that this works is whenever the printer is going to change colors, it's going to first move to the front of it, and it's going to go to the side, and this is where the filament cutter is located. And that filament cutter is going to cut the filament, and then the printer is going to go to the back. And as you can see, there's a little bit of an opening right here where the print head will park itself, and then it will begin to purge out the remaining filament, and it will bring in more filament, and it will purge enough so that there's not any color bleed between the two, and it shoots the filament out through the back of the printer. Now you're going to need something to collect that filament when that happens. And I actually printed this filament box right here, this poop chute box that uses a Gridfinity base and just a few magnets to just keep it on the back of the printer. I printed this out of PETG just to give it a little bit more resistance to the heat, and I'll leave a link in the description to where you can find this model. It was completely free, and it is also very, very effective. And when it's finished purging the filament, it will clean itself on the nozzle wiper that's located in the back, and then it will continue to create a prime tower, and then it'll go over to the print. At least that's what it used to do, because as of firmware 1.01, the printer now completely ignores the nozzle wiper in the back. It doesn't use it for any reason. It doesn't use it before the print starts as part of the startup procedure, and it also doesn't use it when it changes filament. That is a problem that Flashforge needs to fix, that as I record this on June 12th, it has not yet been addressed. Fortunately, I haven't seen a big issue with color bleeding as a result of it not cleaning the wiper. Doesn't mean that's not going to happen. It just means that maybe I just got lucky, but the filament wiper is there, so they definitely need to begin using it again. Now let's look at some multicolor prints. Now I really like HueForge stuff, so let's start with that. Here is a HueForge picture of Venom. And I really like this example because we got white and we have black. And you know that the black can easily bleed into the white. But as you take a look at this, it looks really clean, doesn't it? Don't see red going where it shouldn't go, black going where it shouldn't go. It looks very nice. And then flipping it over on the back to see that very first layer, it is an immaculate first layer. It is a perfect first layer and a very nice looking HueForge print. And then we can take a look at this Joker here, again, black and white. So looking for instances where black and gray and white would mix together in some way. And it doesn't look like it's done that. This is a very good multicolor print. And then we've got this Wolverine here that's comprised of black and white and a little bit of regular gray and a bluish gray. I'm not really feeling the bluish gray, to be honest, but again, the colors go where it's supposed to go and it looks good. Looking at the first layer on this, it wasn't as clean as the ones before. There's a little bit of a roughness right here in the middle, but other than that, I think that this came out looking good. And then for something that has a little bit more color, I like to do some wall art, especially like pixel wall art from video games. So here's a couple from Nintendo. We got this Bowser here that's made up of a few colors, black, green, and white, and a brown. And he looks really, really good. It was supposed to be a keychain, but I blew it up and removed the hole for the keychain. Looks very nice. Then we have this Mario or Luigi in this frog costume. Again, came out really, really good. And to be honest, if you handed me this and asked, what printer did this come off of, the AD5X or my Bamboo Lab A1, I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you the difference because that's how good this print has turned out. Both of these have turned out. And then the last HueForge inspired print I want to show you is this Incredible Hulk comic book cover HueForge here with this fist coming through the middle. Now, the fist and the effect for the fist, these were separate prints, but the comic book cover itself was just one multicolor print. And again, I think that this came out looking good. I wish I had a lighter green for the Incredible Hulk just for aesthetic's sake, but you know, all in all, it came out looking good. Look at the Spider-Man head at the bottom here. Also very nice, very clean. So as far as the multicolor aspects of this printer and getting everything to be nice and clean, I think that it does a very good job. We have these little tiny Venoms here that are little keychains. You take a look at these and you can also see how clean these look for these colors that were put out. I also have this coaster here. Is kind of like a springtime fruit inspired coaster. Again, very clean, very nice. And then my N7 keychain that I printed during a live stream also came out looking pretty good. So the multicolor aspects of this, I mean, it's good. I'm going to keep saying that it's good because it is good. And here's the obligatory benchy. In case you need to judge everything first based on the benchy, we got a multicolor benchy here. And that was just for PLA, but I've also done some printing in PETG as well. For example, I'm a wrestling fan, so I've got this Triple H King of Kings helmet. Now, I will tell you that the face part was printed on this printer, but the top part was not printed on here because it's too big. And then these skulls and these spikes, those are resin printed. So we're only going to be concentrating on the skull part here. And this was appropriate enough to even be put on my head. So a full-grown adult is able to wear this, even though the crown part came off another printer, but at least the masks fit on the AD5X. So if you have more than one printer, you can just incorporate those two printers into each other so that you can come up with something like this. But another print that I made on here was of this Dr. Doom mask. Now I admit it didn't exactly look like this coming off of the build plate. I printed him in black PETG, and I did spray paint him with this metallic silver just to give it a little bit more oomph. But I didn't sand it. I didn't do anything. But when you see the close-up of it, you know, hopefully you'll be able to see any of the evident lines of FDM3 printing. But overall, it came out looking really, really nice. And one of the straps came loose on it. But this is also something that you could put on your face and wear just like that, you know. So if my back strap was on properly, I'll be able to connect the two. But this really just fits me like a glove. I can breathe out of this. I can see just fine out of it. And this was printed on the AD5X. So although traditionally you cannot print full-size helmets on this thing without breaking them up into pieces first, and even then it might not be big enough for you to print the helmet that you want. Some cases, like in this particular case with this Dr. Doom helmet, or mask, you can manage to pull it off. So now that you've seen some prints, let's talk a little bit about the software that you need to run this. Now, there are a couple different slicers that's compatible with this printer. The main slicers is going to be OrcaFlashforge, which is Flashforge's own fork of the ever popular OrcaSlicer that they created specifically for their printers. And then you have OrcaSlicer itself. Now, both have their benefits in their own ways. OrcaSlicer being open source and is first to get the newest features that are contributed to it by the community so that you can always be up to date on everything. But when it comes to OrcaFlashforge, it gives you the ability to connect to the printer, and then you'll be able to see which filaments you have loaded up into the IFS. It'll also give you a screen whenever you want to do multicolor prints that will pop up so that you can confirm what color filaments you're going to use and which spot they're located in, just so that you can have that extra reassurance that what you are printing is going to look exactly how it looks inside of the slicer. And then also from the devices tab in OrcaFlashforge, you can change the temperature of the hot end. You can change the temperature of the bed. And if you have the camera attached to this printer, which Flashforge sells, which is the exact same camera from the Adventure 5M, you can monitor it there from OrcaFlashforge. And if you enable LAN mode on this printer, then you can also still continue to send prints to the printer through LAN mode without ever being connected to the cloud, without ever signing up for a Flashforge account. You can do it that way. But if you don't want to use OrcaFlashforge, you can still use OrcaSlicer because there is a profile for OrcaSlicer. You just have to go into the list of printers that they support and select the AD5X and all of its nozzles if you want, and the profile will be there for you. Only the downside with OrcaSlicer is Flashforge has not opened things up enough to give OrcaSlicer as much information as I would like to see. So for example, the devices tab doesn't show anything. It just almost looks like a web page that is throwing an error because you're not connected to the internet. So you're not able to view the print progress. You're not able to change the temperatures. You can't do that in OrcaSlicer, but you can still slice your file. You can still send your files to the printer wirelessly through OrcaSlicer. But when you do that, you're given two options. You upload the file to the printer, or you can upload it and immediately start the print. But you are not given the option to level the bed before you print. That is something that you can do in OrcaFlashforge, but you can't do it in OrcaSlicer. Also, when it comes to multicolor and multi-material printing, you can do that in OrcaSlicer. It's not as straightforward as OrcaFlashforge, but you can do it. And I've made a video to show you exactly how you can. But essentially, the way that that works is in the filament section in OrcaSlicer, you add 4 filaments, and those filaments have to be exactly what you have loaded up in the IFS. So basically, you just remember what you have here. You go, I got brown in 1, white in 2, beige in 3, and pink in 4. Then you go over to OrcaSlicer, and then you just basically assign those 4 filaments to those 4 spots in OrcaSlicer. And once you're finished coloring your print, if it's already colored from a 3MF file, that's even easier. You send this over to the printer, and when it prints, it is going to print as if you were in OrcaFlashforge telling it what spots are in the IFS specifically. And I printed out this Jerry bookmark using that exact same method, and it came out just how it was supposed to come out from OrcaSlicer. So don't think that you can't use OrcaSlicer to do multi-material, multicolor printing, or that is locked to OrcaFlashforge, because it is not. You can do it, and that video that I made will prove that to you. But it hasn't always been sunshine and rainbows with this printer. It's had some issues as well. The majority of them stemming from software and firmware issues. And I think that's one of the biggest downsides about Flashforge printers in general, even going back to the 5M, because Flashforge will put out these firmware updates that will mess things up. And it's just kind of a roll of a dice whether or not it's going to be fixed. So for example, when I updated the firmware to this printer, one of the issues that I ran into was that I saw that they wouldn't let you turn the sound off on the printer anymore. It does this little jingle whenever it turns on. I didn't want to hear that. So when I updated it, I wanted to roll it back, and I did roll it back. But when I did roll the firmware back, which is as simple as taking the old firmware, putting it on a USB stick and plugging it into the printer and then turning the printer on, when the printer came back online, I ended up getting like an MCU error, and I couldn't heat up the bed and I couldn't heat up the hot end. So I put the new firmware back on here, and that fixed the issue. Went along into the very next firmware update, and I updated it, and it started giving me this odometer error. I don't even know what the odometer refers to in this printer, but every time it gave that error, it would pause the print, and it would do that like every few seconds, making it really impossible to finish a print. So I downgraded the firmware again. Fortunately, Flashforge was pretty quick about putting out a fix to that issue, and in their patch notes, the only thing they mentioned was fixing that odometer error, and they did fix the odometer error. And then I went along into the next firmware update where I saw that the filament wiper in the back was no longer being used. So that's something else that they have to fix. And those are just the issues that I ran into when it comes to the firmware. I got a comment from someone earlier that asked whether or not the bed was taking longer to heat up after a firmware update. It hasn't done that for me, but that's an issue that they're having. And by the way, just in case you're curious, I did time it. And in order for the bed to heat up from 24 degrees Celsius to 50 degrees Celsius, took 1 minute and 32 seconds, which to me, doesn't seem too bad to me. 1 minute, 32 seconds to basically get it up to printing temperature, basically for PLA. So 1.5 minutes, I'm cool with that. And then the nozzle heats up pretty quickly as well. But same thing was true for the original Adventurer 5M. So those are some issues that I've had with this printer, really just dealing with the firmware. I've been one of the fortunate people who didn't have to worry about constant clogs and jams and just things just messing up all the time. My experience with this in 300 hours has been mostly pleasant, but I'm not blind to the other problems that other people are having. So my advice would be, after you watch this video, definitely go check out some other reviews and see what they have to say, and try to put together some commonalities between everything that we're saying so that you can make an informed decision on whether or not you should purchase this printer based on the experiences that we've had. And another thing that I really do feel that I need to tell you about when it comes to this printer is, as of right now, as I record this, there are no replacement parts that you can buy from it. That's not to say that there won't be any in the future, but right now there isn't. Even when it comes to nozzles, there are no official Flashforge nozzles for sale right now. You can find them, but except they're just going to be from third parties on Amazon and AliExpress. But Flashforge's website doesn't have any accessories specifically for the AD5X right now. And I think that that is a really big problem, especially considering that we are around 7 months removed from when this printer was first announced and was sold to the public. And fast forward to today, near the middle of June, and there are no replacement parts, and even for the people who had the printer for many months. And that's really something that Flashforge needs to get on as soon as possible, because if you need an official new nozzle, you want to get it from the manufacturer. But if you can't do that, you're forced to go third party. And if something goes wrong, I mean, what other choice did you have, right? And the other thing is, I'm seeing a pattern, just like with the Adventure 5M, when it comes to the enclosure kit. There is an enclosure that you can print for this printer that will allow you to print with more engineering quality materials like ABS and ASA, things that like to be real nice and toasty and enclosed. The only thing is, the enclosure kit is not officially available yet from Flashforge. You can print all the parts, but you can't put it all together. Fortunately, I hear that the Adventure 5M enclosure kit does fit the AD5X, but it needs another part to go on top because it needs to accommodate for these tubes. So there are these top acrylic panels that don't come in that kit that you either need to source yourself or come up with another creative way to put it together. I did find one on AliExpress, and it was like $90, which was pretty darn expensive. I hope the official kit from Flashforge doesn't cost that much, but it just kind of goes to show that the printer is available now. It's shipping to people now, and people have had it for months, but you can't get the enclosure kit, and you can't get additional accessories, and you can't get additional nozzles or replacement parts yet. And that is very concerning, especially for a printer that's being pushed to be an option for like print farms, for example. And if you're running a print farm, then you definitely are going to need spare parts of just about everything you can get your hands on to keep your operation up and running. And if that's not available to you, then that really takes a printer like this out of the running. So Flashforge, you need to get on that. You need to get on that quick. All in all, my experience with this printer has been mostly positive. Now, I've tried my best to cover all aspects of it, from the good to the bad to everything in between. I hope that you're able to get some value out of this. But once again, I do want to encourage you to please check out the AD5X playlist so that you can see the different things that I've printed with this, including a multi-material coaster from PLA and TPU that came out looking really, really good and functional, to some TPU tires that I made that was a dual TPU make, so that it was TPU tires and TPU words on the tires. Those are the types of things that I experimented with this printer, and you can see the things that I messed up on and things that I was successful on as well. So definitely check that out. And if you have any other questions about this printer, please leave them down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them for you. So that's going to do it for now. I want to thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon.